Okay. So with that, I will go ahead and call to order the Thursday, June 4th, 2020 meeting of the Reno City Planning Commission. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Angela, can you turn that? And I'll ask actually Angela to lead us in that since she's the one closest to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of
To
the
the
United
flag
States of
of the
America,
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is roll call, please. Everybody make sure you're...
Oh, here. Peter Gower,
Here.
Ed Hawkins,
Here.
John Marshall,
Here.
Paula Levis,
Here.
Alex Felto,
Here.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is public comment for either public comment and any action item or any general public comment. Michelle, do we have any request to speak forms or request to speak under this item?
So I had somebody register for public comment, Cameron White. There was also a Marguerite Aceto, but I don't know which item she wanted to speak on. We have Cameron,
Okay.
but we don't have Marguerite, so we're going to allow. Okay, Cameron, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we're doing public comment right now, so if you have 3 minutes to make your public comment, if you'd like to start now.
Great. Thank you. This might not be the appropriate forum, but I just wanted to add my voice to many of those that were given yesterday during yesterday's city council meeting in terms of supporting Black Lives Matter and addressing problems with policing in the city. Again, this might not be the right forum, but I wanted to make sure that as many leaders in our community were aware of these issues. That's all I had to say. I appreciate all of you being here and listening, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cameron. Appreciate that. Michelle, any additional public comment?
I did not have anybody else requesting to speak.
Okay. All right. Well, then with that, I will move on to public hearings. Item 4.1, which is case number LDC 20-00056, the Sinclair Single Family Detached. I believe we will be starting with a presentation from the applicant.
One moment, please. Mike, are you there?
Hello,
Mike, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right, you have 15 minutes to do your presentation. You can start anytime.
Do I get bonus points if I do it in 3?
Yes.
Good evening, Commissioners and Director Foose. This is a special use permit to allow single-family detached use residences in the Midtown Commercial District. It's an allowable use within the district, but it requires an SUP. I don't really know why, but it does. Let me see if I can bring up a quickie little presentation. I've never done this before, so bear with me. Okay, this is the neighborhood that we're talking about. It is the east side of Sinclair Street between Moran to the south and Stewart to the north. So originally, this is part of plat number 4 for City of Reno, the Rylands edition, and then the Burke Survey of Rylands edition. The 2 houses you're looking at now were built between 1917 and 1922. There's a third house involved, which is 536, which is sort of in this gap between the houses. The meat of what we are asking for this SUP is to take 3 existing single-family detached houses that are on one lot and put them onto individual lots. This is the parcel map that has been submitted, reviewed, and basically waiting at this point for the last domino in this process, which is the SUP. As far I know, parking's always a concern. Existing requirement as is 4.75 parking spaces. As we propose to divide this, parking would bump up slightly to 6 parking places. Each individual parcel would need 2. We are providing 8. We have a few additional on-street spaces that are there for public use. This, again, is for a parcel map only. We are planning no work whatsoever to the existing structures. We are not adding density. We have some associated permits in here that are submitted. We have a couple minor housekeeping permits for the existing units. That's just to get rid of some overhangs that would interfere with our required setbacks and some stairway doors. We have submitted and have reviewed a site permit, which is there just to isolate the utilities to City of Reno standards as far as easements on the individual parcels. The parcel map is submitted, basically approved, pending approval of the special use permit. A special use permit for single-family detached residences is certainly not unique to this project. The Midtown bungalows directly to the north of this went through the exact same process back in 2005, 2006. The Martin 3x3 project, which was also 6 single-family detached residential units in Midtown Commercial, was also approved. And I've been responsible for somewhere between 10 and 15 parcel maps with existing single-family homes in Midtown and Wells, but mostly in the Midtown area, that we reduced the size of the lots, but kept them single-family to set them up for additional development, which has been going on. The conditions of the staff report are absolutely fine with us. I want to really give a big shout out to Brooke and, in fact, all of staff, because this is one of the first SUPs that's come in completely under the quarantine, and it worked like clockwork. With that completes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We'll get a presentation from staff, and we'll let you know if we have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so
Brooke, are you there?
I believe, Brooke, is this you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, wonderful. Michelle, can you start my presentation, please?
Yes, just give us one moment, please.
Well, good evening, Planning Commission. Chair Johnson, Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. As Mike mentioned, this is an SUP for detached single family within our mixed use zoning. Next slide, please, Michelle. So just looking at the location of this, it's on Sinclair Street, just south of Stewart. It's approximately 9,475 square feet. There are 3, as Mike detailed, there are 3 existing dwelling units on that site. The site would now currently be considered a multifamily site. What is being requested is to split that up and create single family detached for all of those parcels. As was mentioned, you can see the surrounding sort of parcel sizes there. We're looking anywhere from 800 square feet to 1,700 and moving kind of up from there. We have a mix of single-family detached, single-family attached, multifamily in that area. Additionally, the access is coming off the north on the alley for those on-site parking on that, providing good access there. The city has continued to see reinvestment in this area. We look at private home ownership as another sort of tool to invest in this area. Next slide, please. So once again, that zoning is mixed use, South Virginia Transit Corridor, Midtown Commercial. It has an urban mixed use master plan land use designation, as was mentioned. In that mixed use area, single family detached requires an SUP to establish. Now, once again, these are existing homes. They were probably single family homes at one point. Probably a reversion to acreage happened to create them as multifamily, and now we're seeing them sort of move back, or a proposal to move back to that single family use. Next slide, please. As you can see, that pretty consistent on the surrounding zoning here. And once again, you can look at the varying lot sizes, looking much to very small to, up to kind of our historic lots in this area. So with that, they're division of 3 lots. So there'll be approximately 3,000 square feet apiece on that. Next slide, please, Michelle. As Mike mentioned, they are meeting the parking requirements. They will be meeting all the setback requirements as they move through some of those building permits. Staff has reviewed that parcel map. We have commented back on that. They'll be providing the appropriate easements, utilities, parking, and pedestrian access so that pedestrians can move through the property easily. With that, staff can make all the applicable findings and does recommend approval of the project. Thank you. I'm available for questions as needed.
Okay. Thank you, Brooke. This is a public hearing. Before I open it up for public comment, though, I will ask commissioners for disclosures. To start individually through my list here with Commissioner Taylor.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Gower.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Up to the applicant's representative, visit the site.
Thank you. Commissioner Marshall.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Olivas.
Okay.
Okay, and Commissioner Velto.
No disclosures.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson, I have visited the site. With that, I will open up public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment on this item?
I did not receive requests to make public comment on this item. Oh, wait, hang on.
Okay. Well, then I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for any questions. Anybody have any questions of the applicant or staff?
Commissioner Hawkins,
Commissioner Hawkins.
I'm concerned about how the easements or setbacks are going to be affected by parceling these, taking the one parcel off and making it 3. How's that going to affect the easements and setbacks that are in that area?
So I can speak to that. So we have been reviewing the parcel map. As part of that, what we do check is all those required setbacks. As is proposed currently, it is meeting all the setbacks in that MU area, which are very, small setbacks are allowed within that zoning. Secondly, as far as we look at those easements, there possibly some relocation of a few utilities, but we will be establishing, each unit will have to have its own connection at this point. And so as we review that parcel map, we will ensure that each utility will have an easement, appropriate easement if it moves through someone else's property or anything of that sort. So that will all be recorded with the parcel map to ensure that there's a clarity in that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Commissioners, additional questions or discussion? Or
Trying to come off mute.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Brooke, I'm having a little maybe an own personal issue with retention of existing stock and the consistency of that. Policy 4.3A of the plan, because it seems that what's happening here is a parceling down to allow sale. So you're converting multifamily rental to, some other form of ownership. Has the city looked at whether or not this is the net effect of this is going to be taking this housing stock out of one income class and make it available to a higher, basically only affordable to higher income, I don't want to say higher income, but incomes of greater than what they're currently available to?
Obviously affordable housing or attainable housing is a concern within the city. Specifically to this request, we did not look at that as much as the investment of home ownership within that area, which is, there is a fair amount of, we have a fair amount of multifamily, and we have, as we're looking at that mixed use. So we have a variety of products in there. So with it, looking at 3 units and converting those, staff felt that it was appropriate, to move, to allow the division on that.
Am I kind of off base with my assumption that the net effect of this will be, essentially moving these 3 houses up the income scale? Is that generally what happens when we do something like this?
I think that's hard to predict in a situation like this. They are existing homes. They are occupied homes at this point. So if they move from a rental to an ownership, we're not seeing a net loss of housing, which would be more of a concern in a situation like this.
Okay, I think, my point is that we're probably seeing a net loss of types of housing or a shift in housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not certain that that's consistent with retention of existing housing stock, but that requires some implication that what is meant there by the master plan is the current array of housing stock. But thank you for the answers.
Commissioner Marshall, would you like to pose that question also to the applicant, or have you received enough of an answer?
I think that's an adequate answer for me. If the applicant wants to add something in on that, I don't mind.
This is existing, for the record, Mike McGonigal, sorry. This is not affordable product. It's product that has been renovated in the last 5 or 6 years. They're probably renting, I don't know about the smaller unit, but the other ones are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, totally remodeled units. They're renting in the $2,000 plus range. It is pretty much in the same rent to own equation for a buyer or a renter in these.
Thank you. Actually, I have one other question for Brooke. There's nothing to, aside from historical value of the homes, et cetera, we're not taking off the multifamily based zoning, right? We're just making an SUP that's, so if in the future there's something that, I guess we're downsizing the unit, the parcels though. So are we losing the opportunity to do multifamily on here, I suppose?
We are seeing smaller lots, so the accumulation or acquiring those lots becomes more difficult as you subdivide and have other ownership. We wouldn't anticipate, because of the number of small lots there, to acquire, the acquisition of that would be very difficult. They are, once again, they're existing. They're in sort of a stable neighborhood that's sort of a consistent tone of the older homes. Even the newer stuff that's coming in is consistent in sort of that form and shape. So we wouldn't anticipate a large multifamily development coming in this. As we move more north, where we have some of those larger lands and stuff, that's where we anticipate that we'd see some of that larger multifamily development coming in there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, additional questions? Comments or motion?
ready to make a motion.
Commissioner Gower?
I'll just say before I make the motion that I appreciate Commissioner Marshall's comments. I understand where he's going with that, and I thought that the staff and the applicant's responses were enough for me to be able to make the master plan findings. So in the case of LDC 20-00056, Sinclair Single Family Detached, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, including the master plan findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. I have a motion. I'm looking for a second.
Commissioner Taylor, I second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, with that,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. I was asking for discussion.
No, I just wanted to make just a small comment. While I think support this one, I think somehow we do need to look at the phenomenon. If this is happening throughout, our multifamily area, we need to kind of, I don't know if staff is doing this, but track if what we're seeing is, this is kind of classic, it's, what am I trying to think of? It's creating higher income brackets for areas that once or still are zoned multifamily that, probably good for property values, but maybe not so great for renters. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. I am going to go through a roll call vote just to make it easier for everybody. So we'll start with Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Gower,
Yes.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall.
Yes.
Commissioner Hawkins, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Commissioner Olivas
Commissioner Olivas, yes.
and Commissioner Velto.
Yes.
And Commissioner Johnson also yes. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. With that, we will move on to the next item on our agenda. Item 4.2, case number LDC 20-00057, Sage Point number 9. And we will, I believe, Michelle, have a presentation from the applicant.
Yes, just one moment. Oh, can you hear me? One
I
moment,
can hear you.
please. Yeah, one moment. We're bringing John Krompotic in.
I want to know what's so funny, Angela.
Well, you're missing all the excitement here in the chambers. Things are dropping and it just.
You're on mute.
For some reason, John Krompotic looks a lot like Mr. Barnes from City of Spires.
John, are you there?
Quite a photo, John.
Of all the pictures he could have chose, that's it.
Hey.
Kyle just got disconnected, so can we just take a minute here?
We're going to take a 2-minute break. Maybe someone can entertain us. A little dance, a little music. Anyone? Oh, there's the other John
You've got-
Krompotic.
No, this is not John. I don't know why my name's showing up for John.
Angela, you've got that entire chamber to yourself. You can turn the camera around and have a whole dance party on that floor. So that would take care of the entertainment for a while. Some Broadway show tunes.
I'm not wearing appropriate shoes for that.
Okay. We can't have any twisted ankles, so we're not going to go down that route.
No.
Angela, I'm gonna back out and come back in as another person, I think. Maybe that'll free up, screen time for John.
I think you're probably okay. Stay where you're at. I think we're just trying to bring
Okay.
John in. We'll figure out the name labels. Hey, Scott. I think we are going to have you log off so that John can log back in.
That's what I was thinking. I'll do that. So
Okay.
I'm leaving for now. I'll be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing what John looks like this time.
Maybe we'll get to see his dog again.
That dog looked really happy to be at the last one we did.
We did. Maybe we do a bring your pet to planning commission night. Everyone brings their reptile, fish, cat, whatever you have.
John is still connecting to audio. At least it looks like John this time.
John, can you hear us yet?
I'd just really like to commend Paul for his shirt selection this evening.
I was thinking the same comment.
I can put on my UNLV shirt if you'd like.
Oh, no, you don't need to go there.
I didn't read the dress code portion of the Zoom meeting instructions.
All Nevada.
Okay, I'll check that out next time.
All
No,
Nevada and
we
the
have
big
some
hair,
blue.
too.
We also have some plaid. So I think Mark and John maybe coordinated on one side, and then the other planning commissioners coordinated with blue.
You knew about that. Can you hear me now, Angela?
Yep, we can hear you, John.
Okay, I got my Bluetooth working. That was a freak show. Wow.
Do you have your
Good
PowerPoint
trying to get in. I was in. Okay.
So we've opened it up for you, John, for the presentation on Sage Point number 9.
Thank you. Did staff did staff do a presentation?
Nope, we're gonna let you go first.
Okay, and where is the,
You don't have it, we can bring it up for you, just give us a minute.
okay. This varies by jurisdiction. Last time you guys controlled my PowerPoint, didn't we? No, maybe not. That was the county. Thank you. Michelle, are you there?
Yes,
Okay.
just one moment, please. Okay, so John,
Yeah, are we good?
yes. Go ahead and start.
Am I controlling this?
No, we will do it for you.
You will do, okay, so thank you. Good evening, Commission. John Krompottek with KLS, representing Prologis this evening on Sage Point number 9, zoning map amendment. This is a request from IB to IC on one parcel of 11.24 acres. That is industrial in the Reno master plan. Next slide, please. So you can see, I think everybody is familiar with this general location because there's been a fair amount going on in these types of land use issues in the North Valleys. You can see a site directly across the street is a site that is going to construction. I think it's called Sage Point number 8. You guys approved an SUP there. To the south is Makita, and then further south, as we all know, kind of the bulk of the larger box area of the North Valleys, or at least certainly one area of it. And then, of course, to the east, there's quite a bit of relief topographically, and you can see the distance and separation to Swan Lake going to the east, lower, and east of the site, and then open space to the north. Next slide, please. Again, I see all around in the developed areas to the north and east is the open space, as I noted, largely constrained because of the environmental resources in that direction. And the next slide, please. Thank you. You know, I thought this was germane to the subject of the day, which is the purpose statement of industrial commercial. Do we fit that? And so I'll just read the one bullet, which the district provides for a mix of industrial and small scale commercial. This type of zoning should be separated from residential by natural man-made buffers, such as major drainage ways and arterial roads. And our response is that the IC zoning there is IC zoning along 2 developed property lines adjacent to an approved SUP on the west and under construction with the Makita, which is actually wrapping up on the south. To north and east is open space, vacant land. Those areas will not be developed as they are environmentally constrained. Residential is separated by an arterial at a distance to the south, I think 700 plus feet. And I think it's important the commission know, because of the applicant who is involved in the investment in this property. They have bought it. They have invested in this process. They're specific to a warehouse type of use, particularly for e-commerce, which is such a huge type of demand in our region now. Land is a challenge. Square, flat, fairly large pieces of land that are zoned IC or I fit the mold for that type of use. Next slide, please, Michelle. Thank you. And then industrial all around, you can see again, with exception of the open space. So that's all I have as far as PowerPoint. I would point out that, in our analysis, we look at a lot of things to understand if zoning is appropriate. I talked about the purpose statement. You look at allowed uses. Staff spent most of their effort there, and I'll be glad to engage in any of that discussion with staff and with the commission or a change of uses. Sometimes intensity is part of the equation. In this case, if you look at the bulk and intensity and density standards of IB versus IC, they're essentially the same. It's really about the list of uses that are allowed with the IC zone that give it the flexibility for this particular use. Land use compatibility, I think, is important to analyze in the context of zone change. And you can see that we went through that all the way around the property, very well separated from any sensitive land use types. Master plan, I have a lot of analysis on master plan policy analysis. It's a very, very direct fit to the master plan in all measures of it. And I do have a supplement if you guys want to go into that. And then, of course, all of that leads to the findings, right? So that's kind of the criteria of which we analyzed the zone change. Staff did their own. So I will leave it at that and be here for any supplemental info you need or questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, John. We'll give you any questions after we get a presentation from staff.
Thank you.
I see Kyle has hopped into the meeting, so I will turn it over to him.
One moment, Kyle, we're bringing up your presentation. Okay, Kyle, you can start anytime. Are you there, Kyle?
Okay, apparently I was muted.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Michelle, if you wouldn't mind just going to the next slide. And Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner for the record. Good evening, Commissioners. I missed probably the majority of Mr. Kompotik's PowerPoint, so I'm just going to go through mine. Mine's very straightforward. Probably I'm going to double do what he already said, so I apologize for that, but I just don't know what he talked about. So this is a 11.24 acres vacant site located just northeast of Mount Limbo and Echo Avenue. And it's a request for a zoning map amendment from IB to IC zones. Next slide, please. There's a vicinity map kind of showing you where this is located. If you remember recently, the commission approved a special use permit just to the west across Mount Limbo for Safe Point 8. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here's a existing and proposed zoning map kind of showing the zoning of the area. So currently, as you can see, the lighter gray for this parcel is IB, and it's really, honestly, it's more, it's kind of a spot zoning. There's no IB really surrounding this property, and so the proposal is to change that to an IC zoning. Next slide, please. With that, I would just add that as far as the allowed uses go, the IC zone does allow for additional commercial and industrial type uses. Neither of the zones allow for residential, and so it really, the proposed zoning really fits within the area from surrounding land uses and the zoning. And so staff was able to make all the applicable findings and recommends the Planning Commission recommend the council approve the zoning map amendment. And just also, I have not received any public comment to date. Thank you, and I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Before I check on public comment, I will again ask the commissioners for disclosures. I will start with Commissioner Taylor.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Gower. Commissioner Hawkins.
talked with the applicant's representative, and I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Marshall,
No disclosures.
Commissioner Olivas,
No disclosures.
Commissioner Belto,
No disclosures.
and Commissioner Johnson, no disclosures. Okay, with that, Michelle, do we have any public comment on this item?
I did not receive any request to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, then I will turn it back to the commission for questions of the applicant or staff. Any questions? Or discussion or a motion on the item?
Mr. Hawkins, entertain a motion.
Commissioner Hawkins, the floor is yours.
In the case of LDC 20-00057, Sage Point number 9, and based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zone map amendment by ordinance, and I can find you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. I have a motion, looking for a second.
Commissioner Gower, I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hawkins and a second from Commissioner Gower. Commissioners, any additional discussions before I ask for a roll call vote? Okay, seeing none, I'll start with Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Gower,
Yes.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall,
No.
Commissioner Olivas,
Yes.
Commissioner Velto,
Yes.
and Commissioner Johnson also yes. Motion passes 6 votes to 1 with Commissioner Marshall voting against the motion. So this will move on to City Council as a recommendation.
Thank you very much for your support.
Okay, thank you. Moving on in the agenda to item number 5, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple items to report and the follow-up report that I missed at our last meeting. So at the last meeting, I should have mentioned that the Regional Planning Commission found the City of Reno Master Plan in conformance with the regional plan. There were a list of scheduled additions that were included as part of that determination. So the City of Reno, like all of the other local governments and affected entities that were also found in conformance at the last 2 meetings, will be working to address those scheduled additions to bring it into conformance with the full conformance with the most recent regional plan. Also want to say that the Regional Planning Governing Board is hearing the daybreak appeal of the Regional Planning Commission's finding of conformance of daybreak at a meeting, I can't remember how many months ago. So that is next Thursday at 11 o'clock, and I believe that meeting, or excuse me, Thursday the 11th, and I believe the meeting is at 4 o'clock. Also, one thing that I missed at our last meeting is that the RPC found in conformance the Live Plus Master Plan Amendment. That was the one that we saw over there by the university, by the rendering facility, if you remember that one. So that was found in conformance back in April. That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. With that, move on to item 6, staff announcements. Angela?
Good evening, guys, and good evening, planning commissioners. For the record, Angela Foos, Acting Community Development Director. Just as an update for projects that have gone to council, the Live Plus that Commissioner Gower just mentioned that was approved at the Planning Commission also was back in front of City Council for certification, so that has officially been approved and is through. The Mountain View Mixed Residential Apartments, that was the apartment project that you guys reviewed a couple months ago where you added a condition. It was located off of 4th Street and Summit Ridge Drive. You added a condition that they provide pedestrian connectivity. The HOA appealed the Planning Commission's decision, so that went to City Council. They heard it once, And they asked for the appellant and the applicant to try and come up with a solution. And so the item was continued, and it was heard again by City Council this last week, and City Council approved it. So they still have a pedestrian connection, but it actually doesn't go through the neighborhood. It now goes through a piece of property that's common open space and then connects to Summit Ridge. So they still provide that pedestrian connectivity, I think, which is what was the intent from Planning Commission. Both the HOA and the appellant were in agreement at this revised location. Other than that, I don't think there's been any other planning cases that have gone before City Council. We have kind of back-to-back council meetings, 3 in a row. We had one last week, one this week, and we have one more next week before City Council takes a break, their annual kind of summer break. So we won't be hearing from them again until later in July. And with that, that is it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Marshall, you have a question?
Just, Angela, what's the schedule for the Skywalk?
The
item?
Skywalk, good question. So at the last Planning Commission meeting, you recommended denial of the Skywalk. That goes to City Council on June 10th. The Skywalk itself, which was the special use permit, was continued from by the Planning Commission. That comes back before the Planning Commission on June, I think it's 17th, yeah, at your next Planning Commission meeting.
Assuming the City Council disagrees with our recommendation, or it comes back in.
Correct. So 2 things. On that special use permit that was continued, there is a time frame. So there's a 30-day window when it has to, if it's continued, it has 30 days to come back before Planning Commission. Otherwise, it's automatically deemed approved. So it's coming back to Planning Commission within that 30-day window. At that point, you guys can vote to approve, deny, or make changes, but it has to be done within that 30-day window.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any additional questions for staff? Okay, moving on to item 7, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Not seeing any coming from commissioners. Next would be item 8, public comment. For public comment on any action item or any general public comment. Michelle, do we have any requests to speak?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. And I believe, Angela, there's nobody in chambers. So if we don't have any requests to speak digitally, we don't have any public comment.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. So commissioners, next item on the agenda is item number 9, adjournment.
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone. I guess one last question, Angela. We're still probably looking at online meeting next meeting?
We are, at this point, we have 2 issues. One is our council chambers is now not equipped and set up for a live public meeting. They're due to the destruction. So we have to get some of those items fixed. There's some IT items, our overhead projectors broken, those types of things we need to get fixed before we allow anyone in the meeting. We also right now are under the governor's directive, no more than 50 people can congregate, and that's related to COVID, not to the riots. Some of our meetings tend to have more than 50 people. So at this point, we'll continue holding our meetings through Zoom until we probably get more direction from the governor that will allow us to have more than 50 people in a meeting at one time.
Okay. Well, great. Well, we've adjourned this meeting. We will look forward to another fun Zoom meeting in a couple of weeks.